Welcome to the Dental Implant Practices Podcast, where each episode will explore how to integrate dental implants into your practice and into bone, with your host, Dr. Philip Gordon.
Hey guys, thanks for being listeners to the show. Go to dentalimplantpractices.com and find all of our resources. Also find us on Facebook, Dental Implant Practices page on Facebook, and go to iTunes and leave me a review on iTunes so we can help spread the message. Thanks.
Well, welcome back to another episode of the Dental Implant Practices Podcast. I'm your host, Philip Gordon, and today it's a huge honor for me to be introducing Dr. Isaac Tawil. Isaac, thank you for being on the show tonight.
Thank you for having me, Phil. Yeah. My pleasure.
So, Isaac, I'd love for you to go into kind of a little bit of an introduction about, where you did some of your educational backgrounds, whether your dental school, some advanced training you have, some certifications you have, and where you're currently practicing. If you would just kind of give people up to speed on where you're at now.
Sure, I'd be happy to. I started my dental career by observing my father, who's a dentist, now 40-something years. And I really enjoyed being in his office and assisting, watching him do these cases, a lot of cosmetic cases. And at that point, I was in high school, and I decided that I was going to try to aim for getting a college degree and going towards dental school. I graduated Brooklyn College, and instead of going to dental school, I decided to get a master's in biology, which was kind of a little bit of a turn in the road, but actually worked out to my advantage because when I decided finally to go back to dental school, I had already had a lot of the backgrounds in the sciences. So I ended up at New York College of Dentistry, which I enjoyed being there very, very much. I was president of my class and then president of student council there. Really had a great time and enjoying meeting new people, a lot of whom I'm still in contact today. Some of my classmates like Mike Appa, who was a good friend of mine, who is now a superstar, cosmetic dentist in Manhattan and in Dubai as well. And some other great guys in my class that were just really fun to be around. And when I graduated dental school, I figured that would be it for me. I was going to study, focus on being a general dentist and try to pick up a few other traits, but basically just try to focus on more of the cosmetic aspect of dentistry. When I first started practicing real life dentistry, I didn't so much love what I was doing. So I started looking for other things within dentistry to try to practice. Fortunately, I had a father who was practicing for 40 years and 35 years at that time. 25 years at that time, of dentistry. And I said, let me, he said, take some opportunity to take a lot of continuing education courses and try to find something that you like. Maybe you want to go back to school and become an endodontist or try to at least focus on some things that you enjoy in the practice. And that's what I did. I took a lot of CE, a lot of continuing education in endodontics and eventually in surgery and implantology. And when I hit implantology, I kind of struck a nerve, and I hit a point in my career which I really enjoyed, something that I was about to undertake. And I started taking a lot of classes, a lot of CE courses with various different specialists, a lot of whom were GPs and some were perio and oral surgery. We had a great time traveling around the world, actually. Practicing live surgery on a lot of different patients, some locations like Peru, and I was in Honduras, El Salvador, and Mexico, really expanding my horizons and learning different techniques in implantology. At that point, that was when I decided to really try to approach some of the organizations and get some fellowships, which I did at the ICOI and AAID and the IADI and as well as the International Academy of Dental Facial Aesthetics. And that's one of those points I actually started becoming very, very close with the company Megagen and from Korea. And I spent a lot of time with them, and I earned the title of a MINIC Knight, which is the Megagen International Network of Educators and Clinical Researchers. And we formed a union of clinicians all around the world, educating and doing a lot of different research. I think that's my most proud title, is that I am a Minute Knight with a bunch of my good friends from all around the world. But so I settled in Brooklyn, New York, and been practicing implantology ever since.
Excellent. That's a great story. I can relate somewhat with that. My father is a dentist, and so when I entered the profession, I thought I too would help kind of continue on the cosmetic legacy that he had established, and really found that it wasn't as satisfying for myself. But like you, I took a lot of education, tried to find something that I was passionate about in my heart and soul, and efforts fell into implant dentistry. And, once I found that passion, it's been nothing but implant dentistry since. And so I'm trying to follow in your footsteps here and earning my credentials and traveling across the states and, getting all the CE I can. So I can definitely relate with that story. It's a great story. You've seen a lot of parts of the world. You've seen a lot of the implant systems out there. You've met a lot of people, and you take all that in and you kind of make it your own, and then you take that back to your little part of the world and do what you can with it. So I find your story really encouraging. Who do you think has been the most instrumental part of your journey so far? And I know you've got a great career and you've met a lot of people. Who has been most instrumental in shaping your implant career so far?
So in my early career, I spent a lot of time with Dr. Samuel Lee, who graduated Harvard University in periodontics, which I learned a ton from him, and we came up with he came up with some really innovative techniques, which I continued to try to help and push and educate on, where we did a lot of live surgery training of other dentists all around the world. And part of it was in settling down in Mexico and next to Tijuana and in Tecate as well, and really getting one-on-one with dentists who have the same type of feeling and same stories that we both share, that maybe had fathers or siblings in dentistry and wanted to try to expand on their careers. And I find a lot of the dentists that jump into implantology, that have family members, want to try to go to that next level, try to excel to that next level within their practices and bring something to the practice that maybe is not typically there. So if you have a cosmetic dentist as a sibling, you might want to go ahead and try to bring something into that practice, whether it's endodontics or surgery or implant dentistry, something to that effect. And that's a pretty standard thing that I've been seeing a lot of. Along with Samuel Lee, I know a lot of guidance from Dr. Marie Salama from Atlanta, from Team Atlanta, and Dr. Henry Salama and David Garber, for really trying to nurture my career and helping me out at every turn and giving me opportunities to lecture and speak at their organizations, as well as the person I probably can't live without, and that's Dr. Scott Gantz, who is one of the foremost experts on cone beam dentistry. I remember sitting back in one of my first ICOI lectures and hearing him speak about cone beam when all I had was just a digital X-ray and not even a panoramic unit. And sitting there watching some of the things he was doing that were just now starting to catch up on. And I'm very, very fortunate to have him as my partner in our organization, which is called Advanced Implant Education, that's as AIE for short. About a few years ago, I started that organization, and in about the last year and a half, I was really fortunate to have Dr. Gantz come to be a co-director in our organization. And now we're training dentists all over the world and giving lectures all over the world together, and trying to promote proper education through digital dentistry as best as we can, through digital dentistry through implantology as well. That's more specifically, I should say, not so much on the restorative part, although we do some of that, but mostly guided implant placement with maybe immediate restorations. That type of the scope of dentistry that we really love and try to focus on.
Excellent. So you touched on there the AIE, the Advanced Implant Education. So why don't you tell me a little bit about what that is, what the goals of that are, and kind of what's going on with that, because I know you're doing a lot of teaching and a lot of lecturing. So kind of bring me up to speed on what the AIE is and who that's set out to. Who's a good candidate for that, and what's going on there?
Sure, absolutely. So about 2.5 years ago, I think it's that we started out trying to create just a live surgery program. We've done several live surgery programs, and some of them were kind of phasing out or falling apart. So we kind of did a reboot of this organization. And we basically were trying to just take beginners or some intermediate dentists and trying to push them to the next level. Along with me, had some dear friends who had been educating with me for many years, Dr. David Peck, Dr. Randy Greenberg, Dr. Emil Verbin, who had been coming on a lot of trips with us. We also had some fantastic clinicians from Mexico, Dr. Roberto Santos, and the past president of the AIMB, the Association of Implant Dentistry in Mexico, one of the largest organizations, Dr. Jorge Parra, and others such as Zachary Grillo and Pavel Krestov and Simon Royberg, wonderful instructors who kind of stuck with us for the last few years and trying to instill knowledge or give some tactics and techniques to overcoming some challenging cases. So we started out by just working in the clinic and having just a panoramic unit and some digital x-rays, and now we have full-fledged cone beam units and intraoral scanners, 3D printers, and we're trying to take implant dentistry or teach implant dentistry and bring even beginners up to that next level to make it more simple for them. So our goal is basically to educate as many doctors or dentists, oral physicians, I like to call us, as possible to try to bring us to the next level, whether it's a newbie just trying to place their first implant on the live patient, whether it's a hands-on course somewhere in the U.S. or globally, or just a simple lecture on implantology, the basics to the most advanced concepts. So our goal is really to bring some of the finest clinicians together. We have internationally on the AIE program, we have all the lecturers of Dental XP, including Maurice Olama and Howie Gluckman, Miguel Stanleys of the world. And we're able to try to give these guys some real good positions to go ahead and speak at a lot of the forums that we have, whether it's a Megagen International Symposium or some other venue that we may be sponsoring. So our goal as a unit, myself and Dr. Gant, is to try to bring some of these guys involved. And more recently, we've had guys like Neil Patel join our team, and who's now becoming also a partner in this organization, and some other really great names, which I'm probably forgetting, but some really great names from all over the world. Most recently, this last trip, which some of you may have seen on the Facebook page, we've been switched our location to the BAM Center, which is a business as a missionary in Puebla, Mexico. And we have a wonderful state-of-the-art facility, 3 floors with housing and lecture rooms and full kitchen and staff. It's a wonderful place to actually go ahead and do live surgery. So this was our first trip just last week. I just got home on Sunday, and we're very, very excited about our February and April trips. They'll be heading back down there to Puebla, Mexico. But it's a great place to learn and educate and really have a good time, because I think part of the biggest thing that I think I've really come to love in implant dentistry and teaching implant dentistry is that bond that you get by having this one-on-one relationship with some attendees coming to the course trying to build on their careers. And I don't think there's anything more rewarding than seeing that little spark in someone's eyes, and when they got it, they just understood a specific technique, and they can be able to take that home and use it for the benefits of their own patients. Because I think that's the main thing. I've always said that I want my patients to have the best possible outcome that we can do, and that's not always possible. Sometimes we have some complications or some difficulties that maybe we don't know how to handle. So by myself and others that are able to contribute to the course, we hope to be able to expand our own knowledge to get that back to the attendees, who will then go back home and be able to use those techniques and possibly avoid some complications or know how to deal with certain complications on their own patients. And I think that's the main goal. There's just too much, bad dentistry in this world. And if we can just get enough education, we can get all that bad dentistry and become good, more ethical dentists.
Yeah, I think that's fantastic. You talked about some interesting points here. A lot of CE you can go to nowadays for conventional tooth dentistry you can go to a lecture and see it and hear it and go home and practice it Monday. But if someone's new to implant dentistry, a lot of implant dentistry is the feel of implant dentistry. It's how to cut bone. It's how to press in and place implants, and that's more of a tactile feel with bone and implants. And you don't learn that in school. You're not used to working with bone manipulation and tissue manipulation. So you guys have been able to create a scenario where there's hands-on, and you can teach over the shoulder how to manipulate bone and soft tissue and drive in implants and cut bone and make all these critical steps to take somebody from beginner to intermediate, maybe at a higher degree. Do you feel like that's kind of one of the main benefits of your CE courses? You're able to provide the education and the hands-on feel.
That part is definitely at the forefront of the reason that we're doing all this, is to try to instill some of these techniques and give it back to them so that they can then in turn go back to their patients and it wouldn't be foreign to them. Because you can, like you said, you can watch something. You can go on stage and watch a wonderful speaker at some amazing event, and you can see some of those magnificent pictures. But then you try to go home and do it, and it's not always so simple. It looks simple on stage, and I put a lot of PowerPoint keynote presentations together over the years, and typically we pick our best cases unless we're talking about a complications lecture.
Absolutely.
So it's not always that you're seeing the complications, and some of my favorite lectures are when people show the complications, show their failures. And even some of these, posts that are on the internet, when they show the complications and failures, I think that's something you can actually learn from. When you see some amazing dentistry on social media, it doesn't necessarily really help you learn anything. It's just, look at those pretty pictures. And it's nice, and you want to copy that technique, but it's not so easy to do. But by coming down and actually being able to do these live surgery programs, whether it's with us or anybody, there's so many good programs out there. I'm not trying to be trying to push my own program or anything like our own program, but there's some good programs out there where you can actually go and work on live people, and we all know it. You can go and do something on a mannequin. The mannequin doesn't talk back to you. When you work on a pig jaw, it shouldn't be talking back to you. If it does, then maybe you might have had a little too much to drink. So we're working on live people, they respond. And that's the other added benefit, that they're live people, they're live patients. So you're actually doing something good for them as well, because these people can't necessarily afford to have teeth replaced. They may be stuck with for the rest of their life. We had a patient just last week. We had been working with Row Dental, and we're trying to create this all-on guided implant course to try to be able to do more of these, FP3, bone reduction cases and deliver final restorations, or temporary restorations the same day on like a multi-unit abutment type of a system. And we've been working with them to try to get our system with Megagen into place, and we've finally gotten there. And we had a wonderful patient on, I think it was on Friday, and Sam Huckabee, who's a really great guy, came down and he did the demo case. He had never done one of these cases before, and we helped guide him through that, along with Daniel Nowak from Row Dental, and myself and Dr. Gans and Ashraf Surya from Tunisia, who's also an instructor there. We kind of went through the case with him, and we took this guy who had, really, really bad teeth. I mean, he couldn't smile, he couldn't chew, he was in pain, and we gave him back his entire mouth in one day, full arch restorations on the upper and lower in one day. And he started crying at the end. And I had seen that, and I went over. I said, I thought the guy was just in pain. I said, you okay? Do you need some medicine? And it wasn't. He had just seen himself in the mirror for the first time, and he was, absolutely hysterical crying. And then I looked at Sam Huckabee, and Sam was hysterical crying because he couldn't believe how overwhelmed I was with getting the teeth. So now so now we have a bunch of guys just sitting there all crying, a bunch of grown men sitting there crying at this situation. But it strikes on a nerve in your heart. It's something really powerful to be able to deliver that back to them when they can't afford that. That's something that would be typically, at least at the cheapest I've seen in the market is a $50,000 case. And this person, I doubt he could even pay 50 pesos for his teeth. So it was really something wonderful that we were able to give back. And we've done this as well in locations like in Arizona, which we're going to start up again at the end of the year. We're doing this on U.S. veterans and homeless in Phoenix, Arizona. Currently, Justin Moody is doing a program like that in Arizona, and Justin's a really great guy running some wonderful courses down there in Arizona at the Right Away Institute. And there's some really good places where you can actually not just learn, but you can actually do something good, some altruism out of this as well. So not just for your own knowledge, but just to actually help and give back a little bit to people who can't afford it and probably can't even chew. And now they can smile with confidence, and who knows what happens from there, whether they go out and maybe get a job or maybe a life-changing event. And I've seen it happen to some people, and they've come back and they're no longer homeless. They're no longer, the same person they were beforehand. There's somebody new that's actually started on a new path in life. And I think that's something extremely valuable and often missed in some of these life surgery programs.
Yeah, it's not just about the lecture; it's about the story behind the lecture, and I think that's what maybe you're getting at there. And I think that's what some of those hands-on training can do for you. So I would encourage people to check you out. You've got the AIE Advanced Implant Education. Now you're also doing a lot more other than just that. You also do a lot of work with IDS, Integrated Dental Implant Systems, or Megagen. Why don't you tell me a little bit about what's going on with Megagen? There's a lot of products going on through Megagen right now. You've got the AnyRidge implant, which is early loading. You've got the Smart Dentin Grinder, which is the tooth grinding system. There is the integrating system to measure torque? The ISD.
The ISQ, we have a
ISQ scale.
Sure.
So they've got their own version of the ISQ scale. So let's kind of touch on the AnyRidge. The AnyRidge is supposed to be kind of a game changer as far as early loading and high primary stability. How has that been an impact in your practice, and how early are we actually able to load the AnyRidge system?
That's a good question. So I could spend all day talking about that. But basically, about 3 years ago, the company had taken a transition. Megagen USA had been bought out by a really bright, talented CEO by the name of Terry Lyons, who started to incorporate a lot of different products into it, which is very similar to Megagen. Megagen has always been very, very innovative. Some of the most innovative products that I've seen on the implant market come out of Korea. And Megagen is definitely a huge part of that. So when they came out 7 years ago, I think it was, or 8 years ago with the AnyRidge, and I had the opportunity of playing with it in Mexico before it was FDA approved. It was that first moment that I had actually put it into the bone. I kind of knew that this was kind of like a marriage made in heaven. I enjoyed exactly the stability that I got, and I kind of was in shock that even in soft bone, I was able to get, this immediate stability that I just couldn't get with the previous systems that I was using. And then I started to load these implants, and I started to look at the connection and the way that it had really had a beautiful emergence profile, even starting with its healing abutments. And that's something I think is really unique, that they've had to see these anatomic healing abutments, S-line curve healing abutments that's go as wide as 10 millimeters wide. So I was able to take out a molar, place an implant into, let's say, that interseptal bone, using a technique I love to do where I section the tooth, drill between the roots, and then extract the roots, and then debride and place the implant with some graft around and put a wide healing abutment. So now I was cutting down my procedure. I had originally started by extracting teeth and grafting and coming back to place an implant and then loading, which might have taken 8 to 10 months. And all of a sudden with the AnyRidge, between the surface treatment and various things, I sound like a sales rep for the company. I should kind of cut back on that a little, but as I was loading teeth in about 2.5, 3 months. And it was really incredible. So one of the products, which I had been using way before Megagen came out with their ISQ version, ISQ is basically implant stability quotient. It's a device that measures using radio frequency analysis. It shoots basically a radio frequency into a magnetic smart peg, and it sends a signal down into the implant and gets a bounce back reading, kind of like what you would consider sonar technology, the same type of fashion. And by using that technology, we were able to say, well, we can even load implants even faster. So we started shaving that down, and now we're as soon as even doing same-day restorations. So predictably, we can load an implant in 6 weeks. Whether or not we should or shouldn't load the implant is based off of a whole lot of different factors, whether it's an immediate extraction case or age of the patient, the medical history. So we want to be smart about it. But in an ideal world, we can do with certainty a 6-week loading protocol, which is extremely, extremely fast. I mean, think about how many lives you can actually change over in just 6 weeks, whereas beforehand they may have been in excess of 8 to 10 months. And the other part of it was getting that primary stability and measuring it together with that ISQ. We were actually able to start loading teeth the same day with using science, not just saying, oh, I got great torque. You know, torque is only as good as the day that you have it, the day you place your implant, and then at day 2, there's no such thing as initial torque value anymore. We're waiting for osseointegration, but now we can predictably measure week to week, month to month, however you choose to do it, an actual scientific measurement to decide whether or not the implant is ready or not by giving that bounce back reading. Some of the other amazing products that IDS, that Kerry Lyons brought in, was one of these things was the dentin grinder, the smart dentin grinder. And it made a lot of sense to me because I had read a lot of articles in the past about grinding teeth and then placing them back into the socket and using them for bone preservation and eventually for implant placement. And I started with that, and it was very close to home for me as well because I had been doing a lot of what we call now root membrane or socket shield or partial extraction therapy. About 6 years ago, I was cutting teeth in half and just leaving the buccal root and placing an implant behind the buccal root. Or the piece of the buccal root. So we had started to do that and had some amazing results. So for me to grind up a tooth and place it back in just made all the sense in the world. So it kind of fit right into everything I was looking at, trying to be more autologous. I'd always been into harvesting PRF from the bloodstream and spinning in a centrifuge and getting some sticky bone and a membrane. And now I had a complete solution where I didn't have to necessarily go and grab autogenous bone from the ramus or from the chin. I could actually grind up a tooth and use that for bone graft, which was kind of neat and kind of cool, especially for some of the different religious people in my practice. I have some, very religious Jewish people. I have some religious Indian people that don't really want like cow bone or human bone in their body. And so this was a great way to be able to give them back their teeth by using their own teeth to grind them up and use them for bone graft. So there were some really cool products that came out, along with some things like titanium mesh that actually anchors onto an implant, which was a novel idea. So if you've used a lot of titanium mesh in your career, imagine building around an implant using an implant retained titanium mesh. So some really cool products that keep coming out, including a new product that we just helped develop, which is a fully scannable impression material that has titanium oxide built into it called the Smart Touch. And other things that are just constantly in the pipeline. We're always looking at new products with IDS, and I am a product consultant for them now, and I do mostly education for their products for the ones that I strongly support, and for Megagen as well. So one of the people I forgot to mentioned before in terms of mentors was the CEO of Megagen, which is Dr. Quang Park, who is a real brilliant guy. Something about Megagen that's different from other implant companies is the CEO of Megagen is a dentist. And even though he's a CEO of this, $100 million company, he still practices implant dentistry all the time. We were just in Nice in France at the CFAC SENAME meeting, which is run by Dosa Chokroun and Gilberto Sammartino and many other fabulous people who run that organization. And during his day off, Dr. Park took a course with Giovanni Zucchelli, took a soft tissue course, and then also proceeded to go to a good friend of mine, Dr. Brent Sers from France, and assist him on a sinus lift and implant placement. He actually scrubbed up and got into surgery with him in France, in Nice, on his vacation. And this is someone who's really unique, really special. So, and he keeps doing that. And if someone who's the CEO of a company who's still doing that and not concentrating on the business aspect, really trying to drive the innovation of the company, that's a company I really liked being behind. And so every time I see him on Facebook, not self-posting, but other people posting of him, it reminds me of that's how we all should be, is to strive to constantly be innovative and trying to do more for the greater good, which is exactly what he's doing. And in the end, the finances always come with that. I always say, never worry about the money, just do the right thing and the best thing. And, money and finances will always follow.
No, I think that's great. You've got the AIE Ridge system, which allows you to place an early load. You've got the smart dentin grinder, which obviously allows for maybe bone grafting at a better level. They also have the Reflect implant system, which is if someone's familiar with another line, that's kind of a clone line for people to look into. Let's talk about you spoke just a moment about the partial extraction therapy. I know that's a great topic nowadays. You're in the front line of a lot of techniques with that. Tell me about the kit that is available now. You've had some hand in developing or at least experimenting with that kit. Kind of talk to people about the partial extraction therapy kit, because I think myself included, I've definitely done the procedure a couple times. I think it's great, but I haven't purchased the kit, and I know I'm missing out on the boat when I say that I'm doing the technique but not using the right instruments. So kind of talk with people about the partial extraction therapy or root membrane kit that IDS is offering.
Sure, absolutely. So I think that's one of those game changers in implant dentistry, when you can avoid having to do, let's say, soft tissue grafting procedures just by leaving a fragment of a tooth. So obviously, for those of you who aren't familiar, the idea behind partial extraction therapy is to leave a part of the tooth behind. It all kind of started with the root submergence technique, which was started in 1983 and then again published by David Garber and company in the 90s about submerging roots underneath for pontic spaces. And they saw the beautiful stability of the bone level when they submerged the root. And so from there, it started to evolve. And this fantastic clinician by the name of Simon Press from Greece decided to do this technique called the root membrane, where he would drill through the tooth and he would eliminate the lingual palatal portion of the tooth, not necessarily extract it, but just drill it out, and then shape this buccal surface, a fragment of the root or facial fragment, and plane it down to the bone level and slip an implant right behind it. And they watched as the bone stability and the tissue stability was just absolutely perfect every single time. They had done a ton of cases. As a matter of fact, we're actually coming out with a 10-year paper right now, which I'm really honored to be a part of, which is going to have over 250 cases in there, which I've contributed 42 cases that are above 5 years old. So something that's really near and dear to me, because it's such an amazing concept that we can actually do that without having to do so much. But that being said, it's an extremely difficult procedure to do. To retain part of a root and to leave the right amount and not leave any pathology or any material around it was really difficult. And to their credit, Team Atlanta, Dr. Marie Salama and Team Atlanta had developed a kit through Brasler that was a really wonderful kit that really enabled us to get down to the roots a lot more. But there were some things that could be improved upon, and we saw the need for that. And so we had developed longer burrs with markers on them to know our depth. So if we have a cone beam, we can actually analyze exactly where we should be fragmenting the tooth. And in addition to that, using guided surgery, we can now actually have a guide made to section the root in the right spot and then extract it, and then use another guide to actually drill and place your implant, which is something really, really neat. And you can do all this for pennies using some wonderful software like that was developed by Blue Sky Bio, for example, which is a totally free software, which I absolutely love, and really thank Dr. Sheldon Lerner, the owner of Blue Sky Bio, for offering that out for free, because I think it's a game-changing solution. And using something like a Formlab Sprinter that you can simply buy for, inexpensively for about $3,500, you can be printing guides basically for pennies. So it's something that everyone could do, and you can learn how to design and make these types of guides quite easily. There's a lot of webinars on them. There's some wonderful teachers like Jonathan Naim and some other guys like Augusto de Oliveira and many others who I'm forgetting that are actually teaching how to actually build surgical guides now. So this technique went from really, really difficult to something that can be kind of textbook. Just by using in sequence these drills, you can accomplish them. Now, that's not to say that it's the easiest technique in the world to do. Regardless, there's still some stuff you have to do with it, but it becomes more in line with, let's say, doing something like a crestal sinus lift. So it becomes at that level. So I wouldn't say that it's necessarily a beginner technique, but it's something that you can learn, and using the kit, you can have predictably and reproduce that over and over and over again, which is always the go-to thing in dentistry. If you can do it over and over again successfully, then it's a technique that you should be employing. And by using a kit like this, we can actually do this over and over again, get predictable and repeatable results over and over again, which is our main goal. And our success rates, I'm proud to say, are actually higher than when I extract the entire tooth. So I'm better off leaving part of the tooth. And it sounds funny to say, but I'm actually better off. I have higher success leaving part of the tooth than if I extract the tooth. So, dentistry is always evolving, and there's always little funny things that come along the way. Like, we can touch on as well, like not drilling in forward, but drilling in reverse, something called osseodensification. So there's always something new to learn and something new to do. And that root membrane socket shield partial extraction therapy concept is definitely a tremendous game changer for those of us trying to preserve every little ounce of tissue and bone in our patient's mouth.
Yeah, no, I think it's constant evolution, and it's just ways to adapt and trick biology to doing what you want with it. Now, you touched on a topic there, the osseodensification. Let's jump into that, because I know you've got a lecture out there on the osseodensification from the seminar last year. Why don't you talk to me about what you're doing with the osseodensification in your practice, and how that's kind of been a game changer for you, as I know it has been for many, including myself, across the world. How are you using that process? Actually, let's start with what is osseodensification, and how are you using it within your practice?
Sure. So let me start at the beginning. So I was actually on vacation with my children in Orlando, Florida, and there was this booth there that was called Versa. And their whole idea was osseodensification. And I didn't know what it was, but I had heard someone on stage talking about high insertion torques and trying to get higher values. And they had a little sign up there getting higher insertion torques and better ISQ values on their sign. So I immediately went over, because those are two things that are actually of great concern to me, because I do want to load faster, and the more using a great implant, but if I can do something even better and get same day teeth, I would go for it. So I met with the owner, Salah Huways, who's a brilliant guy, and I put him right up there with some of the greats in implant dentistry, because he has really been someone who has been influenced me tremendously, both in my personal life as well. He's a real great friend and a great mentor of mine. And so I had tried the burrs. I said, "Can I buy a pair?" And he said, "Absolutely, you could take a pair." And so I brought it back. I started using them, and it made perfect sense to me. Here is a burr that you drill in reverse. Now, I've been doing everything backwards my entire life. I've always fallen into things backwards. So this is perfect for me. I said, if I could drive backwards, I'd probably drive backwards too. So let me give this a try. And the idea behind osseodensification is by not drilling in forward, which is what we call extraction drilling, removal of bone, we can drill in reverse and actually try to densify, not compact. There's two different things, but actually densify the bone, meaning we still keep the minerals in the bone when we drill in reverse, as opposed to using, let's say, an osteotome and squishing and squeezing that bone. So by using this concept of osseodensification and drilling in the counterclockwise direction, we create what's called a hydrodynamic compression wave, which is kind of similar to like a little vortex, I would call, inside the osteotomy site. So after using it for just a short period of time, I had done some nice cases and sent them over to Dr. Huways. And at the very next meeting, which was only a few months later, he had asked me to be the speaker, the main podium speaker for them at the AAID, which is the American Academy of Implant Dentistry. Which time I went up and I spoke for about half an hour, and it was a very big deal for me because I'd never spoken to that large of a crowd besides my graduation. There was about 2,000 people in the room, so it was kind of fun to be on stage. of the size of that size was probably my first real big experience speaking on stage. And here I was, this young kid from Brooklyn talking about drilling backwards. And it struck a nerve with a lot of the guys. I mean, there was Mike Picos was in the room, Zib Mazor was in the room, a lot of the big greats, Marius Steigman, and they had all seen this. And you can see now just what Zib Mazor is doing with the burrs. He's doing some absolutely amazing things with them. He's also a great dear friend of mine from Israel, and he's been a great mentor of mine. And he's doing some amazing things with the burrs, not just with drilling the bone in reverse and making it stronger, but expanding bone, using it for sinus lifting, which was something that was kind of a real breakthrough. So when we had figured out that we were able to actually take, something like 4 millimeters of bone and by drilling in reverse, actually push up another 2 or 3 millimeters without even adding bone, we realized that we had discovered something absolutely incredible. And then when we want to add bone, we can even lift the sinus even more. So this took kind of most of the lateral window techniques out of my practice. I wasn't using an osteotome anymore and hammering away at the bone. And I didn't have to do that really too many lateral sinus lifts anymore. As a matter of fact, lateral sinus lifts in my office went down over the last 3 years to where maybe I do a handful a year. I probably teach more lateral sinus windows in sinus courses than I actually do in my office, where I was doing maybe 50 a year before these Densivers came out. Now down to just a handful of them a year. So it's kind of a phasing out that technique in my practice for many of my patients. So it's a wonderful technique, and it's something that anyone can learn. I mean, we can all take this course and actually go back and start using it pretty much right away, right in your office on Monday morning. And something that we also do teach at all of our courses. And if you get a chance, if you see Dr. Huwei's coming to your neck of the woods, I strongly advise going, because you'll learn not just about osteoidentification, but about bone biology in general. It really opens up your eyes to some really interesting things that maybe we kind of forgot about since we left dental school.
Yeah, that's fantastic. I opened up to the Versa process about 6 or 8 months ago, and have been pretty much a strong user since. And so I use the Versa burrs on a daily basis, and now it's hard to imagine kind of going back without them. So I can definitely relate to your experience with that. I love the process, and I'm just kind of always looking for what's next with the dentification, the sinus lifts, the ridge expansion. It seems like there's kind of no limit to what these burrs are possible for. So it's definitely a game changer in my practice, and I'm glad to hear that you're a strong supporter of that.
Yeah, I mean, I think something that I've been very fond of is ridge splitting. For years, I've been lecturing on ridge splitting and trying to kind of refine that technique, because typically ridge splitting had a lot of drawbacks. There's a lot of bone loss after you do the ridge splitting. And so I had always promoted grafting when you ridge split at the same time and getting great results with them. And I've really had a great experience with that. But I was still compacting bone with some expanders and whatnot. Now, like using a combination of something like piezo surgery for ridge splitting along with Densivers to do the expansion, my results are getting even better. And I think that's the key. We have to constantly look for different things to make our results even better. And it could be that I'm just becoming a better surgeon myself, but it also has to do with a lot of the materials that you're using, whether it's, not spending money on cheap bone, buying the better bone, getting the better piezo unit that cuts better so that you can actually not burn bone, by using Densivers that can help densify instead of compact bone. All of those little things, while they seem minute and simple, make a huge difference in your practice. Just like buying that used CBCT that might be 5 years old but has a bad sensor and you can't really identify where the nerve is, or as opposed to getting a really good CBCT where you can see accurately what's going on inside the patient and diagnose properly and be able to treatment plan properly. So all these little things kind of make a difference. I hate to say this because it can be quite expensive, but you always get what you pay for. And if you investigate things the right way and learn how to use those things correctly, you can take yourself to new heights. And I think that's the key, is that we can do the unimaginable, which is take something that had failed in the patient's mouth, something that God gave them and now failed, and reinvent that patient by using some of the most amazing techniques and materials that are in development, and then give it back to the patient. And all these different tools and techniques give the patient a better experience. And I think that's the key. I mean, to tell my patients that are coming for treatment planning that you don't have to wait a year and a half for all this treatment. I can give you this treatment in a much shorter period of time. That's also a great, not just a practice builder for yourself, but it's a great thing for your patient. It's something that can be life-changing for them not to have to wear, let's say, a full denture for a year and a half because we're too cheap to go buy the right materials. So I think that's part of our fundamental aspect of dentistry. We spend a lot of money to go to dental school, and we just seem like we never stop spending money. But in the end, those things become worthwhile when you can actually get back to your patient what they really deserve.
Yeah, I completely agree. It's it's all about using the right techniques and the right technologies. So with that, I'd like to kind of realize that we've been talking about an hour here. I'd like to kind of come to somewhat of a close with this. We could talk all day and all night about this. What I'd like to do is with those final kind of comments you had, kind of talk about what are those technologies that you see coming down the pipeline that you think are kind of instrumental game changers with implant dentistry? And then after what might be a sneak peek in the future, what are the top 3 to 4 things that you feel like have been instrumental, kind of game-changing, useful technologies or systems in your practice that you couldn't practice with nowadays? So kind of let's look at the future for a moment and just kind of dare to dream, and then kind of tell me what 3 things have made the biggest daily practice building techniques that you use in your practice nowadays.
So let's start with the future. So I think that the future is really right around the corner. It's really right now. The amazing technologies like the intraoral scanners. I have a Trio scanner that's absolutely incredible. Being able to make teeth in the office, middle teeth in the office is a great thing. But even better is the laboratory communication that you can get from scanning. Between that, being able to use new softwares that actually are making it easier to export STLs. I mean, you're seeing the evolution. You're seeing Sirona, the Dentsply, the big monster company, unleash CEREC to the world by releasing STLs now, so that everybody can actually partake in the technology. It's not a closed architecture anymore. People are opening up doors. Dentistry is breaking down walls. We're starting to get to the point where we're going to be merging everything. The intraoral scanners are easily merged into several softwares to where we can deliver teeth in the same day, really realistically and predictably. The implant technology, which I can't speak too much about, but there is some amazing technology coming out in implant dentistry with different types of experimental surface treatments that you're going to be seeing in the very, very near future, along with some really amazing zirconia implants that have been coming out that are actually doing the job. They're finally getting to the point where they can be useful in a daily practice. So I think that the evolution is coming, and there's much more that I can't necessarily talk about, but different growth factors and signal markers that are going to be coming out onto the market because of the strong need for these types of materials. As far as practicing without, like what things I can't practice without, I can never practice implant dentistry without a cone beam unit. I need a CBCT. I don't feel responsible if I'm not at least scanning the patient and knowing exactly what I'm doing before I get into it. I always say it's kind of like, or Scott Bianco always says, it's kind of like building a house without having a plan, without having a blueprint. But being more important than that is being able to read the blueprint and understand it. So I think between that, the CBCT, between using autologous substances like PRF, which was a massive game changer for me because of watching the amazing healing ability of the patient's own blood, and using the ISQ device. Those 3 things can combine, especially when they're used together through guided surgery, to give people back their teeth much faster. So I can't work without those 3 specific devices. And when I have those 3 together in my hands, and as well as many others, we can really do some wonderful things for our patients.
A lot of the things we do technically come from advancements in technology. Obviously, science is builds upon itself, and so we're given the opportunity to start generations ahead of the fathers of implant dentistry. We're able to start. So it's great that we're able to employ those technologies and those devices, and we're all looking forward to what's next. But I'm always intrigued to hear what pieces of technology or what devices or systems people can't live without, because everybody practices a little differently. However, the goal is always the same. It's predictable, successful, economical, happy treatment outcomes. So it's getting the patient to their teeth shorter, quicker, faster, cheaper, and anything that gets us
to the best of our ability. To the best of our ability. Of course. Unit,
yes.
Yeah, if we can't afford a combing unit or we're in a location, there's reasons not to be able to have it. I don't mean to say it that way, but for my own practice in Brooklyn, New York, where people are paying good money and where I can afford to have that technology, it's really a device that I can no longer work without and be able to do the constant production that we're doing in our office on a daily basis with proper guidance. I mean, there's other ways around things. Like you always said, different in people's hands, different things work very well. In my hands, those things together make me a much better dentist for my patients.
I couldn't imagine doing implant dentistry without my cone beam anymore.
It's amazing how we did it all beforehand.
It's
kind of eye opening now that when they look back at some of the old cases and to think of how I actually got through some of those. But now I see a lot of the reasons why I failed at some things, and I think that's another lesson that we all have to learn. There's going to be failures, and to overcome those failures and to try to find the reasons as to why we failed. And I think that makes us better dentists to always learn from our own mistakes.
Yeah, that's great. I think we all have we all learn from our successes, but we learn much more from our failures. And so analyzing the why is always the question. Trying to figure out that the why things happen is the pursuit we're going for. So if people are interested in catching up with you and kind of catching a course with you, tell them how they can get some of the CE or some of the courses that you're offering. How would someone be able to get a hold of some of the courses that you're teaching throughout the next year, and how could someone get a hold of your organization?
Sure, absolutely. So the easiest way is to log on to www.AIEdental.com, so Advanced Implant Education Dental.com. You can see all the courses we offer and all the other courses that we sponsor. So there'll be a lot of other guys besides myself on there, and their courses that we kind of approve. And you can certainly log on to dentalxp.com, which I think is a great source of education and Dental XP as well. And lastly, you can go on to the MINEC website, which is MINEC, and it's not .com, but it's .ac. So it's MINEC, MINEC.ac, and you can see us there. And our information is all over those sites. If you want to personally email me, I'm very always happy to share my email address, which is Ike, I-K-E, Tawil, Tawil, @mac.com. I'm always happy to help out with some cases. That's why I'm up so late at night. And but it's enjoyable for me to help. If I can help someone out somewhere halfway across the world, it means a lot to me to be able to help out on even something as small as that. So feel free to email me anytime regarding any type of cases that are dental related, at least.
Yeah, I really appreciate that. I know a lot of people, are willing to teach and lecture, but it really takes a leader and an inspirational person like yourself to open yourself up to people and say, hey, I'm open to teach and share off the hour and off the clock too, and I really respect that about you. And so I appreciate your input with all that. It's been a true pleasure to speak with you today, and looking forward to meeting you more and more in the future and learning from you. So I would encourage people to go to your resources, the AIE, and sign up for your courses and look for you in the future. So Yeah, just really appreciative for everything you're doing and everything you're giving back to implant dentistry.
Thank you, Phil. That's very much appreciated as well. And keep going with the podcast. I think it's great. And I've been listening to a few of them already over the last few weeks. And they're quite impressive. And I think they're very helpful to a lot of people out there. So keep doing this, man. It's doing a great job for exposing more to implant industry. And we need more people like you in the field. If we had a lot more Philip Gordons in the world, this would be a better place. So I appreciate a lot of what you're doing online. It's not always an easy thing to do. Give up your free time and start interviewing other people, especially guys boring like me. So I think it's a great thing you're doing, and I'd love to see you continue.
Well, I appreciate your time, and you have a good evening.
Thank you. You too, Phil.